So, CVs today, yeah. Presumably all of you have got, you don't have to have brought it with you, but you've all got some sort of CV that you've written in the past, yeah? Okay, that's a good start. So I'm Tracy. For those of you that haven't met me before, I'm a careers consultant, and this is the third one of these talks I've been doing in the Careers Week. You'll get the slides, all of them, probably at the end of the week, yeah? So don't have to write down anything. So this is what we're going to look at today. How to scrutinize job adverts, job descriptions and personal specs, because that's the most crucial thing when you're writing a CV. We're going to look at the journey of a CV. Sometimes it's quite useful to think about how does your CV get into the hands of a person or to a robot? Yeah, so we need to think about how it gets there and therefore how you need to write it, because it depends on the context that it reaches that person in as to what it should look like. We'll go into that in a bit more detail. A bit on kind of global CV rules, because there are different CVs for different countries, a few different rules. I'm going to talk about applicant tracking systems, or ATSs, which are these systems that organisations use to keep track of all their CVs. I'm going to talk about defining and articulating your skills on a CV. How do you talk about them? And then I'm going to give you some example CVs and some CV tips. Yeah, as usual, tip in, ask me questions as we go. I don't want to stand and talk at you for an hour and a half, so please feel free to interrupt me whenever you want. So, scrutinizing the job details. If you look at the job details, this is going to tell you what to put in your CV. So here, can you see that? You don't need to read the detail, by the way. You've got a personal specification on the right, and you've got things like essential experience, essential skills and knowledge, essential values and attributes, and desirables. So often in a job description, you'll have the things that are essential for the job, in addition to things that they would like to have. Now, do you think when you're applying for jobs, you need to fulfill all of the criteria? What do you think? No? Guess on what percentage do you need to fulfill when you're applying for jobs, do you think?
Probably less than we'd guess.
Yeah. Exactly. What would you guess?
50% really? I mean, I imagine you just need to sort of flag it. Just say that you're what they're looking for and try and make yourself fit the mold that they want.
Yeah, you've got to try and get yourself in the door, because if you can get an interview, you can expand a little bit more on the skills that you've got. And also, don't forget, when people are writing job descriptions, they're like a wish list. They're things they'd love to have, but they won't always get them. And also, you need to apply for jobs, and remember that some employers are looking for potential. So you might not fulfill all of the criteria, but once they meet you, they might think, okay, well, they haven't got this skill, but just having spoken to them in this interview, we think they've got the potential to learn. So some employers won't just be looking for skills that you already have, but the potential to learn. That's really important. Yeah. So look at the job description, look at the job advert, the job description, and the personal spec. And when you're looking at it, highlight all the relevant skills and experience on there. Go through it with a highlighter pen or do it online and just think, okay, these are the skills that they're looking for. What you can sometimes do is that some job descriptions are very long and repetitive. So if you want to, you can group skills together. So it might say spoken communication and written communication, and you can group them under communication skills. So try and group skills together if you think there's a lot of repetition. That's going to just help you kind of keep things more concise. Double highlight the essentials. So the essentials are usually things that they really, really want. Yeah, so double highlight those and apply, I think, if you fulfill about 70% of the criteria. Yeah, a ballpark figure. Yeah, but you definitely don't have to fulfill all of those criteria. That's the first thing. Yeah, remember potential as well. So here is just, I've taken a couple of job descriptions and shown you where the skills and experience are. So this is at W4MP. And here, there's no detailed job description with this job. It's just the stuff on the job ad. So this says the successful candidate will have the following: strong written and oral communication, previous casework experience, telephone manner, highly organized, etc. I've highlighted the skills on there. Also, this is another personal spec where you'll have a list of criteria, and they grouped it into qualifications, experience, skills, personal qualities. Yeah, so sometimes they'll break it down into skills, both soft skills, so your communication skills, and your hard skills. They might be more technical skills, but also your personal qualities. And here's another one. So here, candidates will be assessed against the following requirements: enrolled in an undergraduate, graduate degree, etc. Yeah, so just really, really scrutinize the job ads before you sit down and do your CV. Really important to know what they are. Because when I'm shortlisting as a human being, if you're lucky enough to have a human being looking at your CV, I will have all those criteria, and I'll be looking at your cover letter and your CV, and I'll be trying to find evidence of those criteria. Yeah, I'm not going to be, it's not a gut feeling or anything like that. It's fulfilling those criteria. Yeah. So any questions? So the take home from that bit is study the job descriptions and the job ads and highlight all the relevant stuff. Questions or comments? No?
Would you use the similar words they use, or would you use synonyms, or does it seem like a bit fake to use the same words?
Yeah, good question. Good question. So if a human being is looking at it, they've got the kind of cognitive ability to kind of align what you've written with what they want. If you've got any kind of software looking at it that's going to be sifting CVs, I would try and use the same words as in the job description. Now, some software is really quite sophisticated and will pick up synonyms. Other organizations might use slightly more outdated software that won't know the synonyms. So I think it's a good idea to use the same wording. Yeah, and it doesn't look fake. It's kind of what you have to do. Yeah, so good question. So think about how a CV might reach a shortlister. So we won't do this in pairs. There aren't many of us, but maybe talk to me if you can. And do this just by yourselves online. And I'll get, if anyone wants to speak back to me, I'll get comments from online as well. Think about different ways that a CV might reach the hands or the screen, depending on how they're looking at it, of someone making hiring decisions within an organization. So think about the journey of a CV and how it might get there. Think about the different routes and ways in which this might happen. Consider big graduate recruiters, SMEs, think tanks, little organizations, and then talk to me about how you think that CV might get into the right hands. So any ideas? How might it reach a person, or what kind of routes might a CV take to get to someone's shortlisting? Any ideas about that? The journey of a CV. Tell you what, I'm going to change my mind. Do it in pairs, have a brainstorm, then I'll collect your ideas. So pair up or in a three, don't mind. See if you can come up with a couple of ideas.
Like point of entry for a CV and
number of people in an organization would look at this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also like,
Yes.
Like applications through like the website.
People can put stuff in the chat box if they want to. Great. Any ideas?
I mean, email it or you
Really try to reach us.
Yeah, so that's one way. You can kind of upload it to wherever they told you to upload it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What else might?
And you get one that come up my mind.
What about if
So, because I think
Yeah,
it's
careers
like,
meeting.
the better it is, to maybe try and personal. Handling online stuff as well. So if you're looking at
absolutely, so you could be at something like careers fair, graduate fairs, or you might be at some of the companies there.
Yeah,
And they go,
I was doing
That's interesting.
find the email of the person.
You're saying we should always carry a copy.
mention it or let them know, let them know, or at least get their email and forward it to them after.
Send it to them.
You might know
Yeah,
someone,
if I realize that
say someone that's interested,
many
I'll give it to them.
was they might want to recruitment, sending it to them personally
So
can
what I'm trying to get at here is that
clients.
way to get
The
your
response quicker and it's onto their personal inbox rather than
by applying for jobs online.
another way.
You've got to do a little bit of networking and seeing if you can get it into the hands as well. That's my main kind of, yeah, to get you to think a bit more broadly. Okay, any ideas what we got? I'm going to start in the room and then I'll go online. How might a CV reach the hands of someone who's going to make decisions about shortlisting?
Yeah, so we were talking about different sort of portals to apply for. So if you could be looking through Indeed, you could be looking through a company's actual website. If you're looking at a really small company, it might be good to intentionally email a specific person who works at the company to sort of be like, hello, this is me. Especially if they're in recruitment, that's a very good targeted place to be looking for. And it shows that you can do your research about the subject as well. So if you're really showing that you're keen by going out of your way to be finding emails of people, that can also be a positive. Yeah.
Absolutely. Excellent. Anything to add? Or here, mind.
Third-party companies, so
Third-party companies.
yes, when like let's say market hires like a company
Yep.
to look out for
Yeah.
for people scrutinizing their CV. So yeah, it's just a little add-on because this company will do what, for instance, you say, like instead of we go and look out on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. So a recruitment company. So a recruiter.
Or in their records, whether it's kind of listed with them, like
Yep. Absolutely.
we thought.
Yeah, absolutely. So an external recruiter, or what you call a third-party company, might connect with you on LinkedIn and say, your profile looks interesting. Can you send me your CV? And then they may look at it and screen it and think whether it's worth passing on to the employers they work for. Yeah, so it can come to them in many, many different ways. It can get into the hands of the decision maker. If you upload it onto something like LinkedIn, your CV, where do you think it goes? It sits in their applicant tracking system, a big kind of database of lots of CVs. Yeah, I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail. Anything online that people wanted to add? No? Okay. So you can give or send the CV to someone directly, as you talked about. It might be someone in an organization, a small organization that you're interested in. You might have a conversation with them at a meeting, at a careers talk, and they send it to me. Yeah, so it might get there that way. So always be ready in any kind of, with any opportunity at careers fairs or like that, to send your CV to people. They're all opportunities. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to bring it with you and push it to everyone, but if the right opportunity arises, yeah, send it to them. So it can go there. A colleague or a friend in a company says, send me your CV, we're recruiting. Yeah, that often happens. So a lot of organizations recruit through what we call referrals, internal referrals. Someone they know or have worked with in the past approaches them, or they reach out to their past colleague, student, and says, send the CV. And if it comes with approval, if the person working in the company says, I think they'd be really good, you've probably got more chance of being shortlisted. Yeah, so there's kind of referrals go on. HR passes it to them. So through the usual channels, you apply for the job, HR reads it. If it's good enough, they pass it to the hiring manager. A recruiter gives it to them. We talked about that. Or it gets to them via an applicant tracking system. So a piece of software that screens for keywords. Yes, a robot. So when you're doing your CV, if you think about the first route, so you're giving it directly to someone in a relevant organization, as opposed to it going through an applicant tracking system, what might be the difference maybe in the way that you form your CV? Think about the context. Actually, let me ask you another question. What would be the difference if I was recruiting someone and I just had your CV that had been passed on to me and I'm reading it, as opposed to I've advertised a job and I've got 40 CVs to look for, or through, or 50 on a Friday afternoon? Yeah.
How what and how you summarize the, I mean, how you summarize what you think it's most important. And how you fit it in the CV.
Yeah, absolutely. So
layout,
yeah, it could impact on that. I mean, if I'm just reading your CV and I've got no others, I might look at it for 5-10 minutes, even 5 minutes. That's quite a long time to look at CV. If it's one of 50, I'll probably give you 20 seconds looking at it. Yeah, so in that sense, I've got to get what I want really, really quickly. Whereas if you know someone in the company, they might give you a little bit more time. So maybe you would argue it doesn't have to, the information doesn't have to be as quickly retrievable. Having said that, you probably want to make it clear in both scenarios.
So a good question here then might be, how long would you suggest a CV to be in these different situations?
Yes.
Maybe that differs as well.
Yeah, generally 2 sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 sides, unless you're going for things like consultancy or finance, in which case it's 1. Yeah, just because they're the rules of the sector. Yeah.
I've got a question online from Eleni who says, how would a CV reach the hands of a hiring individual at a big think tank?
So if it's a big think tank, they probably have a HR department. Yeah, so often it depends on the think tank, but the bigger the company, including think tanks, the more likely they are to have a specialist department doing the recruitment. So as opposed to a smaller think tank where they may not necessarily have a dedicated team for doing that. Yeah, so probably if it's a big think tank through HR, if they have one. Yeah, but some think tanks invite speculative applications. Yeah, so it's about networking, finding out who works there, who's working in the right field, and then sending off a speculative application, even though there might not be a job advertised, to that person, to a named person. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. So this is how CVs are read when someone's looking at lots of CVs. So what you can see on the left-hand side is an unstructured CV. So blocks of text here, not really particularly clear headings down the side. As opposed to on the right, under the blobs, you've got nice divisions here, separate sections, you've got lots of bullet points. And what you can see on the left-hand side is that people don't even look at these kind of big blocks of text. But they do spend a lot of time up here in the recent experience. So what those red blobs are is where people spend most of their time focusing, if you put little eye trackers on them. Yeah, so they're looking up here in the recent experience, they don't even look down here. Whereas on the right hand side with a structured CV, they spend a lot of time up here in the recent experience, in the profile area, where you've got that little profile, and then they scan down the left-hand side, almost like in an F shape. Yeah. So what does that tell you about what's important in your CV when you look at those two, unstructured and structured? What's happening under the blobs on the right-hand side that's not on the left?
Probably the area that's had the most effort put into on the left-hand side, the big blocks of text being completely ignored.
Yep, absolutely. So no big blocks of text because they're not easy to scan and read. Bullet points are really, really important. Use of bold to highlight particular words at the beginning. Yeah, that really draws the eye. So it has to be really inviting to the eye. Invites me to read it. Whereas I look at that, and if it were a Friday afternoon, and I've looked at a lot of CVs, I'm not going to read that. Yeah, it's too detailed, too much going on in those big blocks of text. So it might be important to you, but I just want to get the information I need quickly and easily. So I'm looking down for headings that are relevant to the job description and then reading across. Yeah. So global CVs. What do you think the differences are? Any particular differences from country to country that you know of?
In some countries, people put photos, and some it's you shouldn't really put photos. In some countries, people put a description of themselves. In some countries, they don't.
Yeah.
And in some countries, there's different kind of length that you should go for.
Yeah, absolutely. So photos, no photos is one different from country to country, different lengths from country to country. Generally, most countries 1 to 2 pages as a rule. Any other differences that you can think of? No? What else have I got? So in the first column, what do I call it? In the second column, answer, third column, where. So what do I call it? So a curriculum vitae, we call it that in the UK and in the EU. Whereas in America, Australia, Germany, and Asia, they tend to be called a resume. There's a difference in terminology. How long? So 1 to 2 pages is the answer. Finance and consultancy want 1. Academia, anyone thinking about PhDs? No, academia for those kind of roles. I've looked at academic CVs that are 20 pages long. Yeah. So academia, many more, or if you're quite senior, it could be more than 2 pages. And that's most countries, that rule in general. Yeah. Personal information. So location, mobile number, email address, LinkedIn URL in the UK, US, and Australia. Yeah, so just basics like location, mobile, email, and your LinkedIn URL. But in some EU countries, you have all of the above, plus also things like your nationality, your civil status, your date of birth, gender, even maiden name and marital status. Yeah, but it's changing. Yeah, there's kind of there's change in that direction because it can be seen as discriminatory. Yeah, so again, there's no hard and fast rules. These are just trends that you see. Yeah, but we certainly in the UK don't put date of birth. We don't put nationality on the CV, but they will ask you about visa status at some point in the application process. Yeah. Include a photo. No. In the UK, US, Africa, Israel, Australia, Canada, Mexico, but yes, in EU countries, Latin America, Southeast Asia, Middle East. Come in. Yeah, so photos is different between countries and countries. Having said that, I do a lot of work in Germany, Italy, France, and a lot of recruiters are kind of neutral about that, but it seems to be the trend. Language skills, yes, everywhere. Language skills are useful everywhere. Yeah, particularly you might want to make more of your language skills and put them higher up on the CV if they're relevant to the job. Yeah, if you don't see them as highly relevant to the job, they can go at the end as a separate section, language skills. Yeah, so the more important the information, the higher it up it goes on the CV and the more detail you have. You don't want it to be on the bottom of the second page and they don't get there. It's very, very relevant. Yeah, questions? Okay, so this is just a couple of links where you can look at different rules about CVs for different countries. So applicant tracking systems in recruitment. So who can tell me, what do you think an applicant tracking system is? It's hinted at this already. What do you think it does? Why do we, and let me ask you another question. Why do organizations increasingly use applicant tracking systems? Yeah, exactly. Just because they're overwhelmed with huge numbers of applications, and they just want to quickly find the right people. Yeah, so that's the main reason why they use them. What might be the downside? What's the problem with these kind of systems?
The expressions. Some people might say the same thing but in different words, which might not be what they were researching.
Yeah, so if you're not using the right terminology, you might have the right skills and experience, but you'll be missed. Yeah, absolutely. So here's an applicant tracking system, and it just shows you that all the CVs go into one big storage system, if you like, and then HR or recruiters will put keywords in to sift out the relevant CVs. So that's just how an applicant tracking system works. And if you get selected based on keyword searches, you get put through to the next round, which might be first stage interview. Yeah, so it's just really important to be aware that these systems exist. Oops, I was going to ask you that. Hope you didn't see that. My question was, what percentage of companies do you think use applicant tracking systems? You might have seen that already. Who uses them?
You said something about
Yeah.
It was something about it didn't increase in the last few years.
It has in the last sort of during the pandemic, more and more companies are using kind of this kind of software. Yeah.
The online questions, and can you elaborate on what you mean by keywords? Are keywords mostly related to job specs mostly?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. I'm going to tell you what keywords to put in there. So I will answer that. Yeah, so about 50 to 90% of organizations use applicant tracking systems.
UK or worldwide?
Worldwide. Yeah, worldwide. So it depends on which source you look at, and it seems to vary. But in general, the larger the organization, the more likely they are to use applicant tracking systems. Yeah, as far as I know at the moment, universities, in my personal experience, aren't using them yet, but they might do going forward. Yeah, so increasingly used. They use it for efficiency, really. Now, some clues that an organization is using an applicant tracking system when you're kind of uploading CVs. If you're applying to a large company, worldwide, around 90% of larger companies use them. If you are, when you're uploading your CV, if you're redirected to a new website where they ask you to upload your CV, if the URL has something like this in it, talio.net, that's an applicant tracking system. And in this link here, you can see a list of applicant tracking system vendors. So these are people that sell applicant tracking system software. So I was thinking, well, how do you know? So these are just ideas about how you might find out. So have a look to see whether you're redirected to another website and are they using applicant tracking systems? Just look at the URL. If you ever use the easy apply button on LinkedIn, that goes into the LinkedIn applicant tracking system. Yeah, so they're out there everywhere. So what does a recruiter, what a recruiter may look for when using applicant tracking systems? So these are the sorts of things that are important on an applicant tracking system. So searchability. So the sorts of things are job title match. So if you've ever done any jobs in the past that are the same as the job you're applying for, the job title, That's a good thing. That's a match. That's a positive. Yeah. Now, with your work experience, you may not have ever done a similar job. So that's just the way it is. This gets easier the more experienced you get. So the job title match, an educational match. Have you got the right degree? It looks for that. So if it says a master's and you've got a master's, that's a good thing. That's a tick. Section headings. So it looks for if you've got the right headings, work experience, education. It looks for the correct date formatting. So are the dates in your work, are the dates all the same formatting on your CV? So if you've got June 2006, May 2015, all the way through. So the formatting needs to be consistent throughout. Yeah, so you either use the name of the month and the year or 06, 2015, all the way through. Consistent formatting. Hard skills. So in that job description, it will have a list of hard skills. Have you mentioned them? So it might be some kind of technical writing, quantitative research skills, whatever it is. Hard skills are matched. Soft skills. So things like passion, innovation, attention to detail, vision, inspire. Again, all lifted from the job description. These are all keywords, by the way, answering the online question. And other keywords, things like sort of inspire, judgment, competitive. So these are all from the job description as well. So keywords from the job description. Does that make sense? Yeah, sure. Questions? No? Okay, so you can check whether your CV is applicant tracking system friendly by going onto the UCL Careers website and using VMOC. So you can have a look and put it through the VMOC system to see whether yours is applicant tracking system friendly. Questions so far? Talked about humans, talked about the different ways a CV might reach someone, talked about applicant tracking systems. Questions? No? Carry on. What do you think? As I tell you about applicant tracking systems, what's going through your mind in terms of your CV?
Let me think, how can I make it an advantage? How can I know what the software wants to be, what to put in to make it screen it like as a good one?
Yeah,
So,
okay.
okay, it looks downscale and you think that I'm gonna take a couple of seconds, or you can make it beneficial. You can make it you can look at the right side if you know how to pack right the way it works.
Yeah,
You can make it good for you.
exactly. You've almost got to kind of adapt and adjust your CV in order to get it through the systems. Yeah.
I suggest going through LinkedIn then to look for work, if even though they use systems like this.
I do, because sometimes if you go on LinkedIn, it will advertise a job and you don't necessarily upload it to LinkedIn. It will take you to the website to apply for a job.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely LinkedIn is a good starting point to apply for jobs. Yeah, and follow the link to wherever you need to apply. I don't know much about the quick apply on LinkedIn, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend using that, the quick apply, because you just don't know where that CV goes.
Okay, so it's better when they're just advertising to.
Yeah, I think so. So the job's advertised and then it takes you to links to the actual website and you apply through the website. Yeah. Okay, so defining and articulating skills. What goes in the CV bullet points? That's what I'm going to talk about next. So, can you see that? Can you see the detail? Not really, can you? Okay, so what I'm going to talk about, it doesn't matter if you can't see the detail, but here we've got a CV, we've got a name at the top, an address, a phone number, an email, and a LinkedIn at the top of the CV. Then we've got a profile here. Then we've got here bullet points, and we've got here bullet points. This is a profile with bullet points in, which is a little summary of everything that someone's done. And then here we've got the education section with 3 bullet points. And here we've got education again with A levels. Then we've got marketing experience and bullet points. So what I want to cover now is what goes in the bullet points. Yeah, and we've said why bullet points are really important. That's because you can read them quickly and easily. No big chunks of text. It should be scannable. So what goes into the bullet points? So this is how you get around the applicant tracking systems. So use the same words from the job description as we talked about earlier. Yeah, many recruiters use ATS to search for keywords. So for the skill, list the skill from the job description. If it's written communication skill, write written communication within the bullet point. Then the other rule is if it's an important skill, let's say a big part of the job is communication, you might want to dedicate more than one bullet point to talking about communication. So the more important the skill in the job, the more airtime and space you give it, as a general rule. Then this, I think, is a really useful kind of equation. You say skill, evidence of the skill, what you did, and any outcome that you can measure that relates to you using that skill. I'm going to show you how that's written in a minute, but it's often employers really like to see, if you can, anything that's measurable. So it might be if you've worked with customers that you've got good customer satisfaction scores. It might be a grade from an essay that you've written. It might be something you wrote was published. So try and think for things that you've done, is there a way of measuring how effective you were at doing it? You can't always do this, yeah, but just try to measure it if you can. Yeah, it might be that you got an award for something, that's an outcome measure, the best essay, best student in the year, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so skill, evidence, outcome. So here's a little example, or 3 examples. So the skill, you can't quite see, the colours have come out quite strange on here, but the skill is in red, so team. The evidence is in blue, and the outcome is in this kind of, it's a sort of slightly different reddy colour, which is published work in World Health Magazine. So you don't put your bullet points in different colours on your CV, but you try and have, this is just for illustrative purposes only, but you try and have skill, evidence, outcome. So work within a team of 10 students on a global collaboration. So again, collaboration is kind of teamwork, but we've used the word team, that's a key word. Exploring the impact of food poverty on infant weight, published work in World Health Magazine, that's the outcome. So the skill is team and collaboration, the evidence is what you were doing, and then the outcome. So writing, skill, the evidence, we searched and wrote 5,000-word essay on how CSR can build brand loyalty, presented at a business ethics workshop, awarded 82%. Yeah. And they introduced a new time management system, that's the skill. Oh, sorry, that's the evidence. That's what they were doing. Supporting my manager and working more efficiently, received positive feedback, and manager is now able to keep track of weekly commitments. So you can see supporting my manager was one of the skills they wanted. The feedback is the outcome, and the evidence is introduced a new time management system. That's what they were doing. Does that make sense? Yeah. Do you think you could think of examples like that from either your degree or from work experience that you've got? Yeah, you think you can manage to word it in that way? How is that different to maybe what you've been doing in the past? Anything different about that approach to the one you're currently using, your CVs?
Yeah, so I would often put all of what we're saying in the CV, but I wouldn't necessarily connect them all. So I would maybe have, here's a skill, here is then sort of my work experience, but I would have kept those separate. So hearing to maybe weave that in together in the same section is good advice.
Right, okay, I think I get that. Yeah. Any other thoughts? What's different about this approach to maybe the way you're doing it? Have people put outcome measures on their CVs before? No. Okay, you're all very quiet today. No, maybe the outcome measure is a new thing. Are there any questions from online? No, okay.
You say every single bullet point has something, like, you would have to mention some form of outcome.
No, I think this is kind of something to aim for. Yeah, it doesn't matter if not every bullet point has got an outcome measure, but if you can measure it, it's quite good practice. Yeah, but please don't feel that every single bullet point has to have it in. It doesn't. Yeah. This kind of CV as well, particularly important for things like management consultancy or any time of consultancy work or anything like finance. Yeah. Okay, so that's a skill evidence outcome. So I want you to do this in pairs, if you're in the room, or could we try and do this in breakout rooms online? Yeah. So I'm going to show you 4 requirements taken from a job description or from job descriptions. I want you to choose one job requirement each that you want to address. So you can choose any one that I'm going to show you. And I want you together to brainstorm activities or initiatives that you've been involved with that you think will illustrate that chosen requirement. Yeah, so I'm going to show you maybe communication skills. And I want you to think about anything that you've done, any initiative that's used that. And then I want you to, between you, for the requirement that you chose, see if you can come up with a skill evidence outcome bullet point for that skill and that initiative that you're involved in, just to get you to practice this kind of approach. Yeah, how are we doing online? Are you able to put them into breakout rooms? No, are they in breakout rooms?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we put them into breakout rooms, will they still be able to see the slides? Do they need to see the slide?
There's a bit when you share the slides, you can reshare and include slide sharing on Zoom. So do a new share.
Yeah, I should.
I think new share.
Yeah.
Down here.
I think I should do it from.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that's fine.
Okay, yeah. There's a way of sharing the screen. So I'm going to show you some skills. Do it in pairs. Choose one skill each. Think of an initiative you've been involved with that illustrates that skill, and come up with a bullet point, skill evidence outcome. So here they are. Oops. So we've got analytical and attention to detail, adaptable to a multicultural organisation, written communication skills, able to summarise complex issues in a clear and concise manner, or able to build effective relationships. Yeah, and don't forget, you can take it from your degree, from your master's, from your work experience, anything. Yeah, so think about a scenario where you've had to use one of those skills, and then see if you can come up with a skill, evidence, outcome bullet point together. So 2 from each pair based on your skill. Go for it, 10 minutes. And then I'm going to collect all your examples. Oh, maybe that's not the new version. You can't do it.
Yeah.
They might just have to do a screenshot.
I think they're in the room.
Are they?
I don't know why.
They might just have to do a screenshot of it.
I mean, joining this. Into breakout rooms.
Okay, that usually happens.
Very simple.
Sometimes they come back afterwards.
Yeah.
It happens on the things like this. Is there any way? Oh, because they're not there as well. I can say they can individually.
Yeah, they've left.
Well,
Maybe
you should
the
talk
last
about, you should talk about how you work with a team, but you also able, even you work with a team, you'll keep going. There you go. Hey, there you go.
I got the good egg.
Do you think they'll come back again?
So I think 9 time, yeah. I
They did last time, didn't they? Yeah.
Manner, I wrote a COVID on the education, about
Oh, sure. It was like,
how those yeah, and although I wasn't attention to that's what shows my ability to.
I think I've got great attention to detail, but how do I tell people that I don't?
Mine is
Yeah.
the detail.
tell me about it.
Like,
Because I have worked in museum like for
yeah, okay, so
great skills and I can like try to summarize
roles will you be going for?
For around
So
7.
therefore, in that context, how might
have some problem
make it up?
because
I think that an example,
can't
either as an undergraduate or are you
yeah, there is
postgraduate in your masters where you think you're using.
Well, I see you one.
administration.
Maybe
If you were having to summarize,
and I are gonna have to go straight for that. So
then like there was a talk and
Yeah, under pressure as well.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, could you put that in a bullet point? Could you say, over the last 6 months or for 7 more than 7 talks, summarise an important of important talks in a limited time? Yeah.
that works for the skills, I guess, but also for I guess attention to detail because it's like important that you don't leave it in.
Absolutely, particularly if you say which were then subsequently published
They
on
were,
the
yeah. Not even actually they weren't.
About the policy.
So
Yeah.
it's something that is just a given. Never talked about how to rush it.
Yeah.
Use numbers as well.
I have like
Something like more than 5 talks over.
Oh.
Subsequently published on the political science website.
right. So like
For a range of readers. Yeah, suddenly something
yes.
You are the biggest brain.
So are you on VP?
Yes.
Yes.
So you're undergrad.
Yeah.
Security studies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was wondering what it was gonna be like undergrad. Because are you in any of the societies? They're not as like than just the master's experience, but we haven't like.
Yes, speaking more like that's because it's so central and people just go out and do their own thing. I'll try and write that down, which is like,
Yeah, like, I don't know if it's just.
So that's a really
Yeah, I
good
felt like I
example.
had
Now,
that.
find a way to say it a little bit more succinctly. Yeah, in a kind of one bullet.
There are a lot of societies.
Yeah, I kind
But it's a good example. Yeah, really good. Thinking like the numbers, try and quantify where you
I
can.
like the,
Yeah, put numbers in, so more than
Yeah,
4
that
talks, more than 6 essays, worked in a team of 10. that kind
like
of
if
thing.
they'll do like
Yeah. Anyone got an example they want to share that they feel confident enough to share with me? Yeah, go on.
Sure. So as part of my undergraduates for written communication skills, I wrote a policy brief which was submitted to Parliament on the subject of COVID's effects on education. So that was actually submitted to the Select Committee for Education, and that's time I got first on that. So that is a quantifiable way in which that was achieved.
Great. Throw some numbers in there as well. Wrote a
4,000 words.
4,000 words
Policy.
policy briefing for X.
Yeah.
Resulting in a first. Brilliant. Excellent. Good one. We had one over here, didn't we?
yes.
Say your one.
Well, it's kind of like attention to detail, but also written communication skills. And it's summarized throughout my last year of studying at my master's, like several talks while they were happening and me sitting in the background summarizing them very quickly. So summarize contents of more than 5 talks. under time pressure, which were then subsequently published on the university website.
Brilliant, something like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, go away and play with the wording. I don't expect you to get the wording perfect now, but that's essentially good content. Yeah, great. Anyone else got anything that we can share?
One from online.
Please do, yeah.
We have one question, but I'll do that after.
Okay.
So an example for written communication skills, able to summarize complex issues in a clear and concise manner. As part of my seminar group in one of my master's modules, I wrote legal blogs on the ongoing Russia-Ukrainian war, which got posted online to help students with no legal knowledge to understand important developments with respect to specific international humanitarian law violations from both conflicting sides.
Great, great. Maybe a little bit long, but I'm just kind of being really picky, but that's good. Yeah, excellent. Anyone else? This team. Get anything?
Yeah, so I was thinking, I worked for, so I chose the analytical and attention to detail,
Yep.
but I'm not sure about the outcome, so.
Okay.
I said I worked for high risk cases analyzing data on fraud, corruption and money laundering. Which gave me attention to detail, but I'm not sure how I could mention that, without, I don't know, I think it's a bit embarrassing saying exactly attention, like having developed skills.
Yeah. Yeah, so you don't want to say it explicitly.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
but I want to use the word as you say, because I think that would be helpful, but I'm not sure how to say I have developed attention.
Could you say attention to detail developed through blah, 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 blah?
All right, yeah.
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 And how could you measure that? Were they published somewhere? Were they used for something? Or what part came at the end of that?
They were used for like reports, like for very high risk cases, so it was important, but they weren't published.
Okay. Were they used to inform someone or
Yeah.
something about something? Okay, so you could write used to inform blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Yeah, so try and think about what you're doing and how useful it is. So published on the website, used to inform X, got a first, you know, really try and make it outcome focused, because most jobs, it's not only about the skill that you've got, they want to know how useful you are to them. Yeah, and this measures your kind of usefulness, if you like. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Any more ideas online or?
Oh, we have a question.
Yeah.
CV should use skills as a section title or just group each work experience chronologically, and under each experience repeat every skill required.
Run that by me again.
So should the CV use skills as the section title?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
should they just group each work experience chronologically and under each experience
Yeah.
repeat every skill?
Yeah, so I think you can have something called a skills-based CV where you have a skills section. Recruiters and myself prefer to have a reverse chronological CV with your skills discussed in reverse chronological order. That's the preference of recruiters.
What is reverse chronological?
So the most recent first
Of the jobs.
of your jobs
Okay.
and your education.
Okay.
Yeah, so you don't want your older stuff right at the top.
Oh, this is another thing. When do you stop like putting your school education in?
Yeah,
Who cares that I went to a random school in another country that they've never heard of?
yeah,
Now that I've got 2
absolutely.
degrees,
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that kind of the more experience you get, the less important your primary school, secondary school
Yes.
is. So there's no hard and fast rules, but I'd say if you're working at master's level, you might want to have the equivalent maybe of just your A levels, whatever equivalent they were in your
Yeah.
country, and then probably nothing before that.
But
Yeah.
you'd still put the A-level thing in.
You can do,
Okay.
it's up to you, if you've got enough room.
Yes, that's the thing. I'm thinking like if there's not enough space, then that.
Exactly,
yeah.
you can drop that because you've got to think, right, I've got 2 pages to play with. What's going to be most relevant for them? There are not really hard and fast rules because I don't have my A levels on there anymore because, you know, I've got so much more experience beyond that. So you've just kind of got to use a little bit of common sense, really, and just use your best judgment. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Under each work experience, it's possible that you may repeat the skills in the job requirement is maybe read it.
under each work experience, it's possible that you may repeat the skills in the job requirement. Is it acceptable? Is it, so do they mean?
So like repeating skills, so they might think they have the same skills from different work
If you've
experiences.
got
Oh,
every
their
job,
skills
you've
be-
had a communication.
Oh,
role,
yeah.
teaching communication.
I think you've got to look at the job description and think about how important are communication skills in that job description. If it's a big part of what you'll be doing, then you might want to talk about those communication skills in several jobs because it shows it runs through. Yeah, but if it's one of 20 bullet points, I probably wouldn't keep repeating it. Yeah, so again, it's about how important is that skill and, you know, provide enough evidence to support that skill depending on how important the skill is. Does that make sense? It's just kind of using your judgment. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, so I suppose the key point is try and use that formula throughout your CV and it will really strengthen it. Oops. Okay, so now some example CVs. So I hope you can see this, but I'm going to sort of go through different bits. So this is a typical layout of a CV. And this is all about how to tailor the CV to the job description by using keywords. So here, name, address, phone number, website, LinkedIn URL. Now, at the top, we've got here profile. And what they have done, I'm going to go through it bit by bit. But what you can see here is the first thing in that job description, that job advert, says up here, passionate about marketing and building brands. That's what's popped up here. And so here, the first bullet point in her profile is passion for marketing and building brands. And they've put it at the beginning of the bullet point. And then they've given evidence, created a new Facebook page, an events program resulting in 20% growth in membership for University Geography Society. Yeah, so that's how we're matching the keywords. Next one, client service. Client service is the next bullet point here. Exceeded sales targets 2 months running at Currys through up-to-date product knowledge and quick response to needs of clients. Yeah. Next one, organizational skills. So it says well-organized organizational skills. Won the Wapping Community Award 2014 for my management of a children's football summer school. So they're drawing on all their different experience. So they've got a profile here that has taken 3 of the most important keywords from this job description and put it up front in the profile, just to make it more obvious. Yeah, so this is one way to do it. Then problem solving is another skill in the job description, problem solving here. They've put the skill up front, problem solving, manage the analysis and interpretation of complex data using SPSS statistical package. Another one here, communication skills, which have come up in different places. I missed where that was. Oh, here, communication up there. It says communication received positive feedback from client after negotiating with external supplier to speed up late delivery, invited by line manager to train new staff. So you can see the outcome. As a result of that, they're asked to train more people. And then experience of writing creative content. Writing creative content, set up and maintain society's Facebook site, blah, 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 which now has 330 active users, develop engaging content and post twice a week using Hootsuite. Yep. Yeah.
We have one more question. What if we haven't developed organizational skills from work experience, but only from personal experience? How can we articulate that we organized, especially if it's an important job spec?
Yeah, okay, let me ask the room. Did you hear that question? So this is someone asking online, see what you think. The job spec requires organizational skills. And someone online has said they haven't developed organization skills within the context of their work. So what do they do? What do you think?
You could probably bring that up regarding education. So you could talk about how you've managed maybe a group task through your university degree, say how you've managed to organize your peers to sort of work to a timetable, or in some way that you've managed your workload through education.
Yeah, you could. So you could use your degree, and maybe you've not only managed to submit all your essays and assignments on time, you might have had a small part-time job as well. So you could talk about how you juggled degree and part-time working, even if you didn't feel that you were organizing within your job. So you could do that. What else could you do? I mean, what would be going through my mind is, could I now upskill? Is there anything I could get involved with now which would show my organizational skills? Could I get involved in a society? Could I do something in addition to what I already have? Because sometimes you might have genuine skill gaps on your CV. You might see them coming up a lot, and you might think, actually, I need to upskill a little bit. I need to do a little bit more stuff in this area. Yeah, so think broadly, be creative, think beyond your degree, think about stuff outside. And if you genuinely have a skills gap, think about how you can fill it. Yeah. Okay, so what else here? Okay. So other things here. Profile. You don't have to have a profile at the beginning of CV. It's optional. Yeah, there's no set rules here. But you might, if you think you've got particularly relevant skills for the job you're applying for, you might think, I'm going to have a profile here because they'll see what I've got right up front. So have a profile if you've got some strong evidence. So that's at the top there. For most students and graduates, education comes before your work history. So generally speaking, you have education first. Yeah, unless you've got lots of relevant work experience, and then you might want to put your work experience first. Yeah, if you really want them to see that really quickly. Now, the other thing that they've done here is, because this is a job in marketing, what they have done is they put their education, then they've got their work experience, but they've taken specifically their marketing experience and called it marketing experience. So given it a separate heading to make it stand out. All that marketing experience. And then over here, they've got further work experience with all their other work experience. So if you're going for something within a kind of a research context or some kind of context where you've got relevant work experience, name it the relevant work experience. Yeah. Why would you do that, do you think? What's the point of doing that? To take out the relevant stuff and put it up front.
Clarity.
Exactly. Clarity, efficiency. They read it quickly on the first page, etc. And it's not maybe the third thing down in a list of work experience. What else? Minimize the space taken up by school, as this is now less relevant than university. So that's your question. So that's just A levels. They've got their 10 GCSEs on there, just taking up one line. It's up to you, but just it's less relevant. Quantifying results, we've talked about that wherever possible, put numbers in there. Over here, most recent activity first, so that's the reverse chronological that we were talking about. Here, volunteer local children's football team in Wapping. It says this experience only lasted a few weeks, but it's still useful because it showcases one of the skills the employer wants, which is organisation. Yeah, so sometimes you might think, well, I only did that job for a few weeks, but if you don't have that skill in any other context, you might want to use it. Yeah, so think about the transferability of your skills. Okay, and here's another example, just with kind of separation with grey kind of lines to separate the different sections. You've got education, employment, extracurricular activities, IT skills, and interests. So different ways to lay out the CV. But still, you've got the bullet pointed thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 bullet points there. I probably wouldn't go more than 4 bullet points because it starts to get too long. What about interests? Here they've got debating, public speaking and travel. What do you think about interests? Should we have them on there or shouldn't we? Should? Yeah, why?
Shows you more than just like ticking boxes. You have another personality outside of work.
Yeah, yes. So I think some employers like to see this and some employers will say they don't look at them. I think
Those sectors where when you say section rules, so one page is required, what I would say on the personal profile and interest,
yeah.
if I have skills to showcase and to give more breadth or reads to those skills and the evidence about it. So I would say space on those two sections.
Yeah, so it depends on how much room you've got.
Yes.
It depends on, I mean, I think interest can, I look at them. I think it tells me something new about the person. But whenever I run workshops and speak to employers, 50% say, yeah, we really like them. 50% say we're not interested. So it's just a subjective thing. I think if you're going to write about interest, maybe try and highlight something that you think is kind of relevant to the job, maybe. Yeah, so public speaking might be really, really useful given some of the work that you'll be applying for. So anything like that you think is relevant. But don't do things like enjoy reading in the cinema. Because that's just kind of, everybody enjoys reading in the cinema, don't they? So it doesn't say anything different about you. So try and put something maybe slightly different, but interesting. Yeah. Any other questions about format of CV? No?
Sorry, yes, I do. Oh, sorry.
You go first and then
I think that since we're recent graduates, should we aim for one page? Because I mean, we don't have that much work experience. Even if we have lots to say in the bullet points.
yeah. One page is fine. What I wouldn't do is feel that you have to have 2 pages and you just fill it with stuff for the sake of filling it. So 1 to 2 pages. It depends on the graduate. Sometimes I work with people that have got quite a lot of work experience. Other times, I mean, we've just been through a pandemic, right? So kind of work experience has been limited for people. So 1 page would be okay.
Then, I've heard that you should either have 1 full page or 2 full pages per month.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh,
I agree. Yeah, 1.5 looks like you've run out of ideas.
okay.
Yeah, so 1 whole page or 2 whole pages is good.
That was going to be my follow-up question, but
Yeah.
I mean, there should be a few gaps in the format, because I think mine, I tried to fill in 1 page, but then it doesn't have any spaces.
When you said, do you mean white space? Yeah. So what do people think? Again, because it's very subjective. So if you were looking at CV, it's 1 page, but it's quite cramped together. What do you think about that? What impression would that leave? What are the problems with that?
It's hard to read.
Yeah, it's just a little bit hard to read. So it needs to be really scannable. So I suppose what you're grappling with is you haven't got quite enough for 2 whole pages, but it's quite cramped up on 1. Yeah. I mean, can you play around with kind of the margins and the space between? Maybe play around with that a little bit to see if you can make it a little bit more spaced out. But enough white space is quite important. Yeah. How am I doing for time? Okay, quick past. Nearly there. Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry, first I thought you said you put your work experience first and then your education, but now you've said the opposite. Maybe I misheard that.
No. So there's no one set rule.
Yeah.
Generally, people put their education first. If you've got particularly relevant work experience, you might want to put that first. That makes sense? I know it's a little bit kind of ambiguous, but I think relevant work experience, put it first. If it's more general work experience, put your education first. Yeah. So skill, evidence, outcome, following that formula again. Okay. So a summary of CV tips. So profile, optional. Who think they might put a profile into their CV now? What you're thinking? I suppose it depends on the job. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, it's up to you. Layout, 2 pages at most, enough white space, consistent date formatting, relevant sections, scannable in 20 seconds. Yeah. Reverse chronological within each section. Font size 12 in an easy to read font. So Times New Roman, Arial, Calibri, nothing too fancy. No tables. So try not to insert tables. I've been told that tables can confuse some applicant tracking systems. So stay safe and don't use tables. Use keywords from the job description, project management, communication, etc. Active verbs throughout. So initiated, implemented, led. Yeah, and there's in the slides when you receive them, there's a little link with a list of active verbs, maybe for those, particularly for those maybe whose first language isn't English, that's quite useful. Skill evidence outcome rather than a list of duties. So not responsible for whatever, it's skill evidence outcome. Quantify whenever you can, give 6 talks, team of 8, etc. Check the country rules to make sure you're doing it following the appropriate rules. Check for spelling and grammar. So what I would do is run it by a friend, read it several times. Yeah, I have on occasion, when I haven't been able to separate out people when I've been shortlisting, remove the one with the grammar problems and the spelling, which is harsh, but really, really double check it. And then finally, resources. You've got UCL Careers. I've got lots of resources to help you write your applications. We've got CV checker tool here, which is called VMock. So you can upload and see whether it's applicant tracking system friendly. There's lots of stuff on writing applications there on the UCL link. So if you just put UCL Careers CVs, you'll find all this. And then finally, we've talked about really the importance of scrutinizing that job description. There's no such thing as a generic CV. Yeah, you can have a CV for yourself that's maybe 5 sides long with everything on it you've ever done, but then you need to tailor it for the job description. We talked about how a CV might land in the hands of a recruiter, a bit about global rules, a little bit on applicant tracking systems, how to define those bullet points, and I've shown you some example CVs and some CV tips. And that is it. However, I'm willing to sit here, and if anyone wants to bring me their CV to be checked, I'll have a little look at that. Yeah. Questions? Yeah.
I want to make sure if they can put irrelevant work experience into CV and out what
irrelevant work experience. Okay, so we've got a question here. I don't know if people want to know this. The question is, should I put irrelevant work experience on my CV? And if I don't, what about the gap in time? What do you think about that?
I probably just put it on.
Yeah. So I try not to leave any gaps. You don't want any kind of big gaps on your CV, because then recruiters think the worst. They kind of fill in the gaps. Yeah, because people's imagination are vivid. So don't leave any gaps. And I think most work experience is going to be relevant in some small way. Yeah, even if you've been working in a coffee shop, you're bound to have been under pressure with stroppy people talking at you. You know, try and tease out a transferable skill from that work experience, even if it's just one skill.